The most dangerous assumption a man can make about a woman's indifference is that it is permanent. Because the research on how female attraction actually develops, not how it is portrayed in film, not how it is described in casual conversation, but how it has been documented in decades of behavioral science, tells a completely different story. Indifference is a starting position. It is not a verdict, and the specific psychological forces that shift a woman from genuinely uninterested to genuinely drawn in are not mysterious, not random, and not outside the control of any man who understands what they are. This video covers 4 of those forces, each one documented, each one specific, and each one significantly more accessible than most men ever realize. Here is the foundation that makes everything in this video make sense. Female desire, unlike male attraction, which is more heavily weighted toward initial visual and physical assessment, operates through what relationship psychologists call a context-sensitive evaluation system. A system that is continuously updating its assessment based on new information, new behavioral evidence, and new emotional experience. This is not a weakness in the female attraction system. It is a feature. It is the architecture of a system designed to gather comprehensive information before forming attachment. And it means that the assessment made at the first moment of encounter is never the final one. Evolutionary psychologist David Buss, whose cross-cultural research on human mating strategies produced some of the most replicated findings in the field, described female attraction as a dynamic process rather than a static judgment. His research found consistently that women updated their assessments of potential partners far more frequently and far more substantially than men did, in both positive and negative directions. The initial impression was the beginning of the evaluation, not the conclusion of it. This has a specific and significant implication. The window for creating genuine desire does not close at first impression. It remains open throughout every subsequent interaction, governed by the specific psychological forces that determine how the ongoing evaluation develops. There are 4 of those forces in this video. Each one is distinct from the mechanisms covered in other videos on this channel. Each one targets a different aspect of the female evaluation system. And the 4th force is the one that most people find genuinely counterintuitive, because it involves doing something that every instinct says is the opposite of what you should do when you want someone to be interested. The psychology behind why it works is the most fascinating part of this entire conversation. We'll build toward it. The first force is the contrast effect, being distinctly different from what she has experienced before. This is the force that psychology Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman's research on judgment and decision-making identified as one of the most powerful and most consistently underestimated influences on human evaluation. Human beings do not evaluate anything in absolute terms. They evaluate everything in relative terms, against the backdrop of what they have previously experienced. And when something is distinctly, noticeably different from the comparison set that precedes it, the evaluation shifts dramatically in the direction of that difference. In the context of female attraction and desire, the contrast effect works like this. Every woman carries a comparison set, an accumulated collection of how men have behaved around her, how interactions have felt, what the predictable patterns of male social behavior in her experience have been. And most of that comparison set, if she has any breadth of social experience, is remarkably consistent. Men who are trying to impress her, men who are performing interest without genuine curiosity, men who are managing how they come across rather than actually being present, men who treat conversation as a means to an end rather than an experience in itself. A man who is genuinely different from this comparison set does not just register as pleasant. He registers as remarkable. The contrast itself creates a tension that neutral pleasantness cannot produce. Here is the practical application. The question is not, how do I make a good impression? The question is, what would make this interaction feel completely different from what she has experienced before? Genuine curiosity rather than performed interest. Direct honesty rather than managed presentation. comfort with silence rather than anxiety about filling it, responses that reflect actual thought rather than social reflexes. Kahneman's research found that the contrast effect on evaluation was significantly stronger than the baseline value of the thing being evaluated in many assessments, which means that being genuinely different from what she has experienced before has more impact on her evaluation than almost anything else about him. Be genuinely different, not strategically different, not performing unusualness, actually different because he actually is the person he presents himself to be, and that person is not performing anything. The second force is emotional state transfer. His internal state is contagious. This is one of the most practically significant findings in the social psychology of attraction, and one of the least discussed. Research by social psychologist Elaine Hatfield at the University of Hawaii, whose work on emotional contagion has been foundational in the field, established that human beings unconsciously and automatically synchronize their emotional states with the emotional states of the people around them. The mechanism is neurological. The mirror neuron system activates in response to observed emotional expression, producing the same neural patterns in the observer as in the person being observed. The result is that emotions are genuinely contagious. The internal state of the person you are with becomes, to a measurable degree, your internal state. For attraction, this has a specific and powerful implication. A man who is genuinely in a positive emotional state, not performing happiness, not projecting enthusiasm as a social strategy, but actually experiencing genuine positive affect, transfers that state to the people around him. And the experience of feeling good in someone's presence, as the reward association research established, becomes associated with that specific person. The brain learns, being around him feels good, and that learned association becomes the neurological substrate of desire. This is not about being relentlessly cheerful or performing positivity. Emotional contagion responds to genuine states, not performed ones. What it requires is an actual positive relationship with one's own life and experience, genuine enthusiasm about something, genuine satisfaction in something, a genuine sense of fullness that has nothing to do with whether she is interested or not. The man who is genuinely absorbed in his own life, genuinely interested in his own experiences and pursuits, and genuinely positive about what he is doing, walks into interactions with an emotional state that transfers. And the woman in that interaction begins to feel the state before she has consciously assessed anything about him. Manage the internal state first. The attraction follows from the state, not the strategy. The third force is the approval independent signal, not needing her to like him. This is the force that runs most directly counter to what anxiety about attraction produces. And understanding why it works requires understanding something specific about how the female evaluation system assesses value. Research from behavioral economist Dan Ariely on the psychology of value perception found that the value placed on anything, including a person's attention and regard, correlates inversely with the ease of its acquisition. When something is freely and readily available to anyone who wants it, its perceived value decreases. When something is available only under specific conditions, when its allocation reflects genuine discrimination and genuine standards, its perceived value increases significantly. A man who visibly needs a woman's approval, whose emotional state rises and falls with her responses, who is clearly invested in whether she likes him before she has given him any particular reason to care, is demonstrating that his regard is freely and readily available. He hasn't assessed her particularly, he just wants her approval. And the female evaluation system, which is assessing the value of his interest as part of assessing him overall, receives this as information about what his regard is worth. A man who is genuinely indifferent to her approval, not cold, not dismissive, but simply and genuinely unconcerned with whether she finds him impressive, communicates the opposite. His regard, when it eventually focuses, carries a different weight because it has been selective. because it was not freely distributed to whoever was in front of him. The approval independence signal is not performed indifference. It is the genuine internal experience of someone who has a full enough life, a settled enough sense of his own value, and a genuinely functioning standard for who he finds interesting. That any specific woman's approval is a welcome addition rather than a necessary condition. This is the force that looks from the outside like confidence, but it is not confidence in the performance sense. It is the genuine indifference to approval that comes from having something worth being indifferent about. The fourth force is vulnerability without fragility, the combination that creates trust and desire simultaneously. This is the counterintuitive one, and it requires the clearest possible explanation because the misapplication of this principle is one of the most consistent mistakes in the psychology of attraction. Brené Brown's research at the University of Houston established that genuine vulnerability, the willingness to be honest about uncertainty, about genuine feeling, about the real interior experience of a situation, was the foundation of genuine human connection. Not performed vulnerability, which reads as manipulation. Genuine vulnerability, which requires the actual willingness to be seen in an imperfect, uncertain, emotionally real state. But here is the critical distinction that most people miss when they encounter this research. Vulnerability and fragility are not the same thing. Vulnerability is the willingness to be honest about what one genuinely experiences. Fragility is the inability to function when that honest experience is not received the way one hopes. A man who is vulnerable without being fragile, who can express genuine feeling, genuine uncertainty, genuine care without collapsing if the response is not what he wanted, communicates something that is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily compelling in the female evaluation system. He communicates, "I am honest about what I experience, and I am stable enough that my honesty does not require a specific response to remain intact." This combination, genuine emotional honesty without emotional dependence on the response, produces what attachment researchers identify as the most attractive relational quality available: secure presence. The presence of someone who is fully real and fully stable at the same time, who feels deeply and functions regardless, who can be honest without requiring the honesty to be rewarded. For a woman whose evaluation system is specifically designed to assess trustworthiness and stability alongside genuine connection, this combination does something that neither vulnerability alone nor strength alone can produce. It creates the specific experience of being with someone who is both safe and real, and that experience in female attachment psychology is the most powerful generator of genuine desire available. Here is the complete picture of what shifts a woman's assessment from indifference to genuine desire. The contrast effect that makes him distinctly different from the comparison set she has been building from all her previous experience. The emotional state transfer that makes being around him feel genuinely positive before she has consciously evaluated anything. The approval independence signal that communicates that his regard, when it arrives, has been selectively allocated. And the vulnerability without fragility that creates the specific experience of someone who is both genuinely real and genuinely stable. 4 forces, each one targeting a different component of the female evaluation system, each one creating a different piece of the complete picture that shifts assessment from indifference to genuine interest. None of them are performances. All of them are expressions of genuine qualities. And the reason genuine qualities create genuine attraction, rather than techniques creating temporary impressions, is that the female evaluation system is specifically designed to detect the difference between the two. It has been doing that assessment automatically, continuously, and accurately for a very long time. Be genuinely different, manage the internal state that transfers, release the need for her approval, and be honestly vulnerable without being fragile. The evaluation system will do the rest. Before this video ends, there is a dimension of this conversation that we haven't covered yet, and it is the one that operates before any of the 4 forces in this video have had time to work. We just covered how to shift indifference to desire over time through accumulated behavioral evidence, through emotional state transfer, through the approval independence signal, through vulnerable stability. All four of these forces require interaction. They require time. They require the ongoing evaluation system to have material to work with. But there is a moment that comes before all of that, the moment of first encounter. And what happens in that moment, what the female social processing system registers before a single interaction has occurred, determines the starting position that all four forces are working from. The video on your screen right now covers exactly that moment. It is called She Can't Resist You, the instant attraction trick for men. It covers the four specific behavioral expressions of genuine presence that the female brain reads before conversation begins. Amy Cuddy's Harvard Social Perception Research, Zick Rubin's Gaze Research, Daniel Kahneman's Self-Regulation Findings, and Luann Brisendine's Female Brain Neuroscience. All of it explaining what the female evaluation system is registering before you've said a word. This video gave you the forces that build desire over time. That video gives you the starting position that makes those forces work from the strongest possible foundation. Watch it now.